Good morning, Scott and Beth. Can you guys help me welcome Pastor Scott and Beth this morning? As you guys know, we're in our Vision Month, kind of setting 4 or 5 weeks aside at the beginning of the year to kind of talk through the 5 functions of a healthy church. Me sharing with you guys, according to God's Word, how do we get to a place where this church can move forward, be bold for the gospel, make moves, be an impact in the community. And so last week, I introduced you to the 5 functions, and those are connect, grow, serve, move, and worship. And we'll spend the next few weeks after this talking about those a little more intimately over the next few weeks. But today, Alyssa and Tiffany, they're totally right. It is Legacy Sunday. I feel like there's a lot of people in the room that weren't with us during our planting stages when we were in a gym, when we were in a middle school. And so we wanted to take an opportunity for Scott and Beth to share that story. I get goosebumps hearing it. I'm sure they don't believe that, but I do. I love hearing it. I love talking about it. And I can't wait for them to get the opportunity. Turn that light back on for me, Brandon. That'd be great. I love you, buddy. Can't see this paper. It's cool. I appreciate it. Give it up for Brandon, everybody. Brandon's awesome. He's always serving. He's always helping out with kids check-in. He is great. But yeah, today you get your chance. And so I want to introduce you to our founding pastors, Scott and Beth Harms. I love them so much. Quick story. I was a teenager serving in the youth group at our last church. And this guy was playing on my brother's softball team, and he was running sound, and his wife was the singer on stage, and I was playing the drums for her, and it was just a family that I knew and loved, and over time they started taking interest in what God's doing in my life, pouring into me, loving me. And I remember the first official hangout I was supposed to have with Scott. We were going to go to lunch and go shooting. We went to the shooting range. So he takes me to the gun range, and I wasn't old enough, and he didn't know I wasn't old enough. So we're signing papers, and he's like, "Are you guys father, son?" And Scott looks at me, starts laughing.
We are not related, sir. I find it hard to believe, but yeah.
It was so funny. He's like, "Well, I guess you're not old enough to shoot a gun yet, so we'll just go get lunch or something." So that was my first time, and then we spent the next couple of years what did we play?
I played racquetball.
I played racquetball. Yeah. And I just have to admit, Scott is way better than me at racquetball. I thought I was going to come in and dominate him because I'm this young guy, I play sports. No, he murdered me almost every time. So, and then also I had a lot of experience playing the drums for Beth, and Beth really helped me shape how I even see worship and how I see playing the drums and participating with the church. And so I love you guys. Thanks so much for being here. Okay, I'm going to get started because you don't need to hear more.
Well, there's one announcement that I think Alyssa forgot to make. Can I just share really quickly for all of you? There's some people here are just dressed so nicely this morning, and I just wanted to let you know, Beth and I had talked about it, and we considered starting a Minnesota Vikings life group. So
I wasn't a part of
gathering
this.
next week. But then what was interesting, I asked my wife that, and she said, "Well, the good news is now that I'm a counselor, you can join Thrive when they lose, and it'll be a Minnesota Vikings support group."
Yes.
So we'll see how it goes.
I like that. Beth, well said. Okay, so here's the first question. I feel like a lot of people here don't know this and are just dying to know. Let's break the ice here. Would you guys tell us how you met and how you proposed?
Wow. Right to the good stuff.
Yeah, yes, right. Why don't you jump in on this one?
Well, I was working on staff at a church, a local church, and his dad, we had gone through a pastoral change, and his dad was the senior pastor. And so I always joke because I fell in love with his mom and dad before I fell in love with him. But I really loved working for your dad those years. But anyways, I was there, and his niece came up to visit. And at the time she was a teenager, I was younger than I am now. And we just really hit it off, and we were talking, and she's like, "You need to meet my uncle." And I'm like, crazy uncle or
old uncle?
So
handsome uncle.
One thing and she doesn't, this is the first time, this is new revelation for you guys this morning. So I had, at Thanksgiving time, I had come up to visit my parents, just really briefly, my older brother and I, and she didn't realize that I knew this, but it didn't come out, this information didn't come out until after we had gotten married, but I never did tell her. But apparently, after we had left, she said something to my dad about her 2 sons, and why didn't you tell me you had such a good-looking son? And of course, my my brother Mike was, all puffed up, thinking that she was meaning him. But my dad told me that she had said that some years down the road. So, yeah, that was new.
It might be true.
New information.
It might be true.
It might be true.
In fact, I think the
I'm not gonna
adjective she
confess
used was
to it.
hot.
Hot. Oh,
Hot.
wow,
So-
Beth. Okay, and briefly tell us. He shared the whole story with me earlier, but tell us a little bit about how you proposed to Beth.
Well, so after we had been introduced by my niece, we were emailing each other, and we got
Emailing each other.
yeah, on dial-up. So every time I would email, boop, 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 boop. And so we had been talking to each other by email for, I don't know, gosh, a long time. I don't know how long it was, but yeah, several months. And we got to the place where we had, one day I asked her if I could call her. And so I called her after I got off of work, and it must have been 7, 8 o'clock when I called, and we sat on the phone. We would sit on the phone after that until like 2 o'clock in the morning talking. So before I had actually gotten up here to really actually meet her and introduce ourselves to each other, we knew each other pretty well. And so I came up, I moved up from Tulsa, Oklahoma on July 3rd of 99. And then the very next day, on July 4th, I joined Beth and her family for their 4th of July celebration.
And I told them, I said, look, this is like an all-day affair for us. We wake up, we go to the first parade at like 9 o'clock. Then we hit my aunt's house, Sonny, your folks' house, for the big family reunion, family picnic cookout. And then we head to my sister's house and we go swimming and we cook out again. And then we hit the fireworks that night. And so I was like, you can stay with us as long as you want or as short as you want. And he made it through the whole day. We were
I'm a real
together the whole
trooper.
day.
Very
I was
So,
committed. I mean,
yeah.
she was that attractive. So we went to. You guys know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So we went to fireworks, and this. I told Juan, this is where the story gets a little bit controversial, and her memory is a little bit foggy. But we went to the fireworks with the Panos, and we were sitting at the Walgreens down. You remember this, Peg? We were sitting at the Walgreens down.
I was sitting on a
at-
manhole cover.
on Ramsey, and
He offered me his hand.
she
to pull
gave
me up.
her hand
And
to
then
me
he
to
wouldn't
pull
let
me
go.
up, and then when I
No.
stood up, she refused to let go of my hand, and I was
He
like,
refused to let
she
go.
does think I'm hot. She is into me. So,
You refused to let go.
and then her sisters confessed to us at Christmas time that they knew at that point that we were going to be married. So the following year, then I'm sorry, I should speak more quickly, but the following year, my plan was to propose to her on July 4th. The same niece that had gotten us introduced to one another online helped me pick out a ring, and we had gone ring shopping together, and I was going to propose to her on July 4th. But I had this ring that I was keeping in the glove box of my little Nissan pickup, and it was kind of burning a hole in my glove box, and I couldn't wait. And then I
It
was
was the
also
safest place he could think of at the time. I
the
guess.
glove
I
box
don't
of my
know.
truck. Nobody was going to go in that truck. And so I was thinking to myself, she's probably expecting me to propose to her on July 4th, fireworks and all that stuff, which would have been really romantic. But I opted for a different surprise attack. I proposed to her on July 1st instead.
In which case, we went to Taco Bell for lunch.
Yeah, I went all out. I
True
spoiled her. I let her
story,
pick
true
out
story.
2 chalupas and a cheesy gordita.
I was
Come on.
crabby, so crusty that day, so crabby. And then we go for a walk in the park. We come across the bridge. This is in Whitnell Park, so very close by, guys. It's a landmark now.
Yeah, I think they erected some sort of a monument
On the
there.
bridge that crosses over the Root River, ironically.
Aw.
He got down on one knee,
Yeah.
sobbing, crying.
You were sobbing and crying, Scott?
No,
was,
I
he was
wasn't.
begging and pleading.
Yeah, but I do have to say that in all honesty, that when I came up here and met her on July 4th, she was instantly my bestie. I never wanted to hang out with any of the guys at work or anything. If I had a few minutes, I wanted to hang out with her. I mean, she was just my bestie and has been now for it's been 23 years since then. So yeah, that's the story.
Wow,
And we're sticking to it.
You're sticking to it. I love it so much. It's such a good story, and it's proof that she's your bestie. It's proof by the way you guys love each other that you have that connection. So thanks for letting us in on some of that. Okay, now let's get to some other things here. Now, before Root River Church was even a thing, what were you two both up in life in general, in ministry in general, and how did you come to that conclusion that Root River Church was going to be a thing at all?
Well, from the time that, as she had mentioned, she was on staff at the church where my dad was pastoring, and so from the time that we knew each other, we had always been doing ministry together in one capacity or another. She was doing music. I used to run sound for the group for years. And from time to time, I would fill in teaching, a class here or there. I might fill in at some of the young adults groups, preaching from time to time, and really had no intent of ever going down this path. In fact, when I was young, my dad was a church planter, and for those of you who know how that works, typically you don't step into a role where, as a church planter, where you're making enough money to support your family and doing all of that. So I was actually a little bit resentful as I was growing up that my dad was a church planter. He was working 2 and 3 jobs. We grew up on a pig farm, and he just did what he had to do to make ends meet. So I had, at a very early age, I said, there is no way that I'm ever going down that path. And so I think in his providence, God was very careful how he led me along, because I think if he had just made me feel right up front, okay, Scott, I'm going to turn you into a church planter or a pastor, I would have taken off running for the hills. And so he was very strategic in how he placed that on our hearts. And we, as we were ministering in churches together, I just at one point felt like, well, you know what, I had started my degree in Bible and theology and had not completed it. And so I felt, well, I should go back and just wrap that up. So I actually went through Global University and just began to do the rest of my Bible and theology through correspondence. And I think, what did it take, 2 years, I think, before I wrapped that up. And as we were getting close to finishing that degree, then I just had a sense that, it'll lend a little bit more credibility to, your teaching ministry if you would go ahead and get your credentials. And so I thought, okay, yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. And so I ended up getting credentialed, I think it was April of 2015. So now I've completed my degree. I've gone to get my credentialing, and really had no thought of going any farther than that until I think it just at the same time it happened. Why don't you tell how that went down?
So I was on staff at Poplar Creek Church in New Berlin as their music director, and we were in ministry there. And I think after my mom passed away, that was kind of a key moment for us, just kind of taking inventory on what are we really doing with our lives? What are we really doing with our time? And I started to feel this restlessness in my heart. Not really sure what it was, just began praying, Lord, help me to be content with where I am. I feel like I'm always kind of looking forward in ministry. Like, I like doing what I'm doing, but I like to reach a little farther. And I wasn't doing that quite as much, or maybe didn't have the same kind of passion at the time, just feeling like, God, what is it that you want me to do? What is it that you want us to do? And our pastor began to talk about church growth with the staff, and he was talking about potentially planting churches in the Milwaukee area. Didn't have any real details at the time, but then I attended a summit, so be careful with those summit Saturdays. God will sometimes use those to speak to you.
Planting churches.
Yeah, and I was sitting there through the meeting, and our pastor was sharing vision and talking about his vision for church growth and some other things. But then when he was sharing more details, he said, I believe God is wanting us to plant churches in the Milwaukee metro area. He mentioned a few places that I had heard him mention before. And then he mentioned Franklin, and I was like, I never heard him talk about a church plant in Franklin before in our staff meetings or anything. And all of a sudden, something just like burned in my heart. And I'm not a super spiritual person. I don't hear audible messages from God. I don't see visions, any of that. I just felt a very strong tug on my heart. And I thought, oh my gosh, like, could the Lord maybe be wanting us to do this? And I almost just went and talked to the pastor and asked him, like, hey, can we do this? Can we be the church planter? And then I was like, I should probably talk to Scott first. He might need to get on board with that. So I couldn't wait till I got home. I called him on my way home, and I said, I was sitting in the meeting. This is what happened. I don't know. I could be totally off my rocker, but I'm feeling like this desire that maybe God is, this passion that maybe God is birthing in us to plant a church, and gets really quiet on the other end. And I'm like, oh no, I'm crazy. I'm not hearing the right, I'm off the wall. And he said, well, actually, I've been feeling that same thing for the last 3 or 4 months, but I haven't wanted to share that with you. I wanted God to put that on your heart to kind of confirm that. And oh my gosh, it was like, after that, honestly, I feel like it was just take the next step. And we just moved in that direction. And we first of all prayed about it for a few days. And then we said we need to make an appointment to talk to our pastor about it and see if he confirms it. And so we did that. And he confirmed it and was like, yeah, I think this is the direction that you should move in. And honestly, I feel like it was just take the next step.
I love that. It's so cool, right? It's not Scott's planting seeds. It's not Beth planting seeds. It was God doing something in a person's heart, and he brought them together. I think that speaks to how genuine it is, how pure it is. Go ahead, Scott.
Yeah, and I believe that God knows that of us. And if, anything that we do in life, we're going, like I said, we're besties. We're going to do it together. And I think if one of us had felt it and the other one hadn't, there's no way that we would have moved forward. And so the way that God placed that on our hearts at the same time, it was just, to us, it was a no-brainer.
I love that. And so for those of you who didn't know Scott and Beth there, Kayla, would you put up that picture, the family picture? This is the family. This is what they looked like when they planted the church. You'll see the girl in the back left side, that's Maddie Harms. She's right over there. The guy in the front with the glasses, that's Sam Harms. He's half the size. And then Seth, he's so tiny you can barely see him in that picture. But he's so little, I don't know where he is. But that's Seth, and then obviously Scott and Beth. And so when I was looking through these pictures, I'm like, that's the same family. It doesn't seem right. It's crazy, crazy, crazy. So that's that family. All right, Scott, Beth, let's go to the next question. So you're at this point where you're hearing from God. You think like you have an idea of what God has for you, and you're taking these next steps to pursue it. What did the planning stage look like? Everything up to launch Sunday. Was there a formal process? How did you build a team, and what was the core of your vision?
Well, we started by attending there was a church planters summit that we went to out in Denver, Colorado. And I'm thinking it must have been in May, I think, somewhere around there, June, July of 2015. And so we went out and we gathered with all these people who were planning to plant. And they had these strategy sessions, and you know how it is, right? You're coming up with all of these mission statements and purpose statements and all of this stuff, and they're telling you how you gather a team and how you raise money and all of that. And so we began to go there and gather that kind of information. We began planning, and it kind of felt a little bit like we were trying to force a round peg into a square hole. I mean, the information was good, but some of the stuff for us, I don't know, maybe because I'm not that bright, they're wanting us to come up with these fantastic, purpose statements and all that, and all I could come up with was 3 words, and so ultimately we ended up going with that, and the idea was that we just felt that once the believer is informed by the Word of God, it's at that point, because we understand rightly our relationship to God, that we are compelled to give God-focused and God-centered worship. And we felt that part of that expression of worship was how we reach into our community and just tell people, come see what God is doing. So that was all we could come up with, or all I could come up with. Beth had all kinds of ideas, but I could only come up with word worship and community. So that's how we began. And then when we came back from Denver, at that point, the next step was to begin gathering a team. We wanted to be very careful that we weren't going out recruiting people. I mean, that was not what we felt the Lord wanted of us. We felt that we resigned ourselves to giving that all to God. And we said, Lord, this is your church plant. If you want us to do this, you need to bring the right people to fill the right positions at the right time. And so we were very, very careful not to go out and recruit and bring people in. Although in the planting seminar, they told us, yeah, that's what you should do. You should go out and aim high and bring people in. So there were only two that I can think of. There were only two people that we actually approached. And prior to doing that, we actually reached out to their pastors and said, we would like to reach out to this person and ask if they would join us. One of those was actually Juan Carlos, and I was so blessed.
He said yes.
He did say yes, yeah. And then another was another family that we had ministered with for years. We reached out to their pastor, sat and had lunch with him and said we'd like to invite them. And he said, yeah, go for it. They'll be great. That didn't work out, but that was it. Aside from that, God just brought the right people. Why don't you tell a little bit about how we ended up with our children's pastor?
Yes, I think we knew we needed a few key people in ministry to serve, and so we were praying, Lord, we need somebody for youth, which we felt, Juan, you were the perfect guy for the job, and I'm so thankful that you partnered with us back then and now. And then we were thinking a children's worker, a children's director would be necessary to help during the Sunday service to prepare materials for the kids and minister to the kids. And so we were just praying about it. We didn't really have anybody in mind, and nobody was like stepping forward to take that job. And I was at Target just doing a Target run, and I run into an old friend of mine from high school, and we're catching up a little bit, and she's like, what are you up to? And I'm like, well, we're actually, and she's a believer. We met in high school and found out that we were both Christians, and so we kind of had kept touch a little bit through the years, but I hadn't seen her in a long, long time. So she was like, what are you up to? And I said, well, actually, we're getting ready to plant a church in Franklin. And she's like, oh, wow. She's like, I just resigned from my church as the children's director. It's just things weren't working out for whatever reason. And she just got real curious about what God was doing with us and in the church planting stage. And ironically enough, she ended up partnering with us and becoming the children's director. And it just was a great fit. She got us on a great start with the kids ministry and putting together a curriculum and ordering supplies. And she really just took the ball and ran with it. And she and her husband and kids were just a huge blessing to us. But God just put us both in the right place at the right time. And you can't coordinate that, from an earthly perspective or from a human standpoint. That was definitely God putting that piece together, that essential piece that we needed.
Yeah, that's so good. And her name is Jackie Rudder, and her and her husband did serve us really, really well. Jackie committed to a little over a year, right? Yeah. And then we transitioned over to Teresa, who's serving upstairs right now, faithfully. Yeah. Okay, so you're at this point, you're planning, your vision is Word Worship Community. You've asked a few people, you've gathered a few people, you went to CMN conference in Denver, Colorado. So you're ready, you've got this team, you're ready to truck forward. Can you walk us through that transition from planning to planting stage? What did prep look like? What did launch look like?
So we're almost ready. I mean, at this point, it's a dream and it's a vision. We have no money at all. We have no idea how we're going to do that. So while we were at this CMN conference, they were talking to us about raising money, and the idea was that if we could raise, the number was $30,000. They said if you can come up with $30,000, then we will match that fund on a loan, and this is how you pay it back. You'll be, committed to whatever it was. So it was years of, just paying back. And so we got started, and we were thinking about it. And so as we were considering that, I was like, man, I don't know. I mean, it'd be great to be able to start with $60,000, but that seems like a lot of money to pay back. So I don't want to do that. So we thought we would just start with what we had, and so we went to as we were leaving our last church, we were given the good fortune of being able to. They were in the habit of doing what they called a missionary Sunday, once a quarter, every 6 months, whatever it was. And we were blessed that they allowed us to be the missionaries that week. And so on our last Sunday there, we preached and worshiped, and at the end they took an offering, and we got almost $5,000 when we left. At the same time, my dad was on staff at a large church down in the Springfield area of Missouri, and so he had talked to their executive pastor. The next thing we know, we got another check for $5,000. So we got, now we've got $10,000, and then we just began talking to people who were in our support group, who were part of the, who were going to be part of the plant, and our family committed to contributing, a little bit of money, and so the next thing you know, we got $20,000, and then because we were able to raise that much, the network, the AG network here in our district, which is Wisconsin, Northern Michigan, they kicked in $10,000. So now we got $30,000, and we could either go to, at this point, the headquarters and ask them to match that, or we could just roll with it. And we decided let's just go with it. We got $30,000. Let's see what we can do with it. And we, fortunately, Beth and I had been ministering, as I said, together for quite some time, and so we had at one point bought some equipment because we were going out to the House of Corrections, and we were ministering there, and some of you were with us then, and so we had this equipment. It was it was an old beater that that we had packed up and carried around quite a lot, and it was beaten up, but we didn't have to buy it. We had it, and we were ready to go. So the next thing we did was, I think I spent $800 to get, you remember that maroon trailer that we used to have that had Mark's Woodworking Shop or something in vinyl letters on the side? You remember that? And I thought, man, we're going to dress this thing up. I'm peeling that vinyl off, and this thing is going to look great. So I could peel the vinyl off, and of course, the sun had weathered everything except for what was under the vinyl, and so it still said Mark's Woodworking or whatever it was. And so we just jumped in, and we loaded. We went out and we bought the equipment that we needed for the children's ministry. We bought the drum set that we still have here, and a few other things. And that's how we used our $30,000, and so we jumped in and got started with our trailer, which was parked in our driveway for probably 2 years at least, and that's how we got through the initial planning, and
I love every bit of that. I missed that trailer. Can you tell us, what did prep for the launch service look like, and then what did launch service look like itself?
Well, the prep was, the most important thing was that we had to find a place. So we had, how many of you know where, what's it, Orchard View, I think, shopping center up on 76th and Rawson? You know where that's at? Right there on the corner. That's where the Harry's Ace Hardware is up there. There was a space there in the corner that we thought would be perfect, and we're going to rent this space, and that's where we're going to begin having church. The problem was that the zoning for that area did not allow for places of worship, and so, and many of you, I see Mary Lou back there smiling as we talk about that, Miss Tammy as well. We went through the process of meeting with the city of Franklin to try and have it rezoned so that we could actually have a place of worship there, and that got a little bit chippy, to be perfectly honest with you. They didn't like it, and so at one point, I made the mistake. I don't know if you would, I guess it was a mistake. I made the decision, let's say, to approach the zoning or the city council with a law that is known as the Religious Land Use. Has anybody ever heard of that? The Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act, which basically says that you can't discriminate in your zoning to exclude places of worship. And so they were allowing similar places to occupy space in that shopping center, and so I just went to the Common Council. I knew I got one shot at this, and so I brought it up. And there were some officials in the city who did not, you remember that? They did not like that. In fact, I remember when we were done, Miss Tammy says, I've been to a lot of Common Council meetings. I've been to a lot of political meetings. I have never seen anything like that. But in no uncertain terms, we were told, no, you are not going to meet there.
I actually have a picture. I couldn't find the picture of us inside the room, but I have a picture of us outside praying about it. Here it is right here. There's Scott leading that room. I don't know, there's probably 15, 20 of us total that day.
And just to add to that, I think it was around that time, maybe before that meeting, that we had decided as kind of the launch group to sign up for days to pray. We sang a song this morning that said, "The battle belongs to the Lord. We fight the battle on our knees in prayer." And it drove us to that place of prayer and fasting. And that group of people was committed to pray and seek God's will and His best for us. If it wasn't in the shopping center, Lord, where is it? Direct us to that place. And I think that was really a defining moment for us as a team, that we're in this together and we're going to fight the battle on our knees. God is going to direct us, and little by little the plan.
Yeah, so we began after that searching for a place. We decided, obviously, this is not going to happen, so we started looking around. We were looking at hotels where we might rent, a conference room or something. We looked at, was it the Polish Cultural Center or something like that? We had looked everywhere. And at one point, I approached the school, and I talked to the guy who was in charge of of renting out the gym and stuff like that, and he said, "No, we're getting out of the church business. We're not going to do that anymore." And so, as we were approaching launch time, it was set for September 11th, and that was in 2016. And I am sure we were only just a couple weeks. We were inside of a month. We were just a couple weeks out, and we didn't have a place. And I remember, some conversation saying we seriously need to consider pushing launch date back. And I said, no, we're not doing that. We're launching September 11th, and if we have to do that in our backyard, that's what we're doing. We're launching September 11th. And then I reached out, I think, one last time to that guy, and I said, look, we're desperate. We need a place to go. We've got nowhere to go. And he said, okay, I'll let you come here at the school. So we went to Forest Park Middle School, and he said, you can be here, but just so that you know, this is going to be a very, very temporary thing. You're not going to stay here long, right? So launch day comes on September 11th, and prior to that, though, we decided, we've got this trailer full of stuff. How is the launch day going to go? Because we've only got 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever it was, to be able to set up, do our thing, and tear down. And so we decided that we would do a test run prior to launching, and we actually went to the gym. Do you remember this? To the gym at West Layton Assembly. They allowed us to go in and set up, and after that test run, I'm surprised we ended up launching.
It was horrible. Horrible.
We timed ourselves. We're like rushing to get the drums set up and dropping things, and the sound is horrible. And
sound was horrible.
I remember.
We can't do this in a gym. This is
I remember leaving there and Beth
saying,
saying,
sit through this.
Yeah, nobody's going to come to this. This is going to be.
It's going to be us three
It's
and our
going to
families.
just the three of us. So.
Maybe our families.
Maybe
I
our
don't know.
families. Yeah, right. So you got us to Forest Park Middle School. After the launch service, tell us how many people came to the launch service, and what were your conversations like with each other following that?
Yeah, so on launch day, we had, I think it was, I wrote it down here so that I wouldn't forget, we had 88 adults, and we had 38 people in the kids ministry. So we had a total of 126, and I was, we were hoping for more than that. So we had kind of mixed feelings. At the same time, we're like, well, this is great. There's actually 126 people for your launch date. And after the service, I remember going home, and my mom and dad had come up to wish us well for the launch service. And so I'm sitting there at the table with my dad, and I just remember looking at him and saying to myself, Dad, you're going home. Most of the people who came here today were, either from out of town or they were just here to wish us well. There's not going to be anybody here next week. And sure enough, 2 weeks later, we had a total of 51 people, I think, show up. And so I have to tell you, my heart was broken, and I thought, I don't know how we're going to sustain this.
But 51 people is double the planting team, right? Double the launch team.
Yeah,
so God did show up. Now, I have some pictures. There's like 5 or 6. Kayla, show us a little bit what Launch Sunday, that when you walked in the front doors, this is what it looked like. There's balloons everywhere. There's coffee to the left. Next picture. Let's see what we got here. This is our team setting up. I couldn't find a picture with the trailer, sadly enough. But there's Scott getting some things. We let people have root beer floats that Sunday. We came to root beer float church at all the parades and stuff. But so that's another picture of us setting up. Next picture, Kayla, if you've got one. There's Scott. He's casting vision. He's being all charming on Sunday. Next picture, please. Okay, this is what our setup looked like. It's bare. There's nobody in it. Everything, the text in the back. We've got a microphone on a stand.
And this, I think, was midway through the service.
No. This is so funny. But the gym was really fun. Like, we thought it was going to be rinky-dink, maybe like the gym we pretended to be in. But this gym was really, really nice, and that's what it looked like with nobody in it. Next picture, please. This is Scott doing his morning meeting to the core team there, just praying over the service.
And we have to shout out to the core team because you guys were amazing. Every Sunday, getting there, I think 6 a.m. to unload the trailer. Scott was up earlier than that.
Yeah,
getting
originally,
the trailer and the supplies from the storage unit that we had to keep things
originally
in.
we were afraid to keep stuff in the trailer because it was going to get cold at night, and so we would haul the stuff into our living room, and then at 5 in the morning I'd get up and haul it all out of the living room and load it onto the trailer and head out, and then everybody would meet us there, and we'd put it all together then. But how many people were of you who are here now were, I call them OGs, the original goers? How many of you are OGs? Could you stand up? I want you to see all of our OGs who are still with us. And even though Andrew and Anna are not standing up, they were there. They were there. So this is our
round of applause.
Scott, we've got some more pictures here too. Let's see if we've got a couple more. There's more morning meeting stuff. Next picture, please. That's the kids' ministry. We were in classrooms. We had to tape the floors to make sure we didn't mess up the teachers' chairs and their tables. Next picture. That's us during service. And so there's people there, Scott. Not mid-service, empty. And then I think there's one last group pic. This is the picture we took after service of the people who came to help set up and tear down. And many of them are still here this morning. So launch service was special I know it was special to you guys, special to me. We're running short on time, so I'm going to skip question 5. Question 5 was all about after we were done at Forest Park Middle School, we couldn't be there anymore, kind of kicked us out because they're going through some renovations, beautiful facility there now. And so we transitioned to a school called Southwood Glen Elementary near Oak Creek area. And we were there for, 4, 5, 6 months.
It was about 5 months, and then they told us we had to leave there, and we landed here.
We landed here in this building, and we had an awesome launch here. It was a really, really fun. We had our own space. I know the youth group, we were meeting in the Starbucks located inside Target. That's where we were doing youth group. I'd tell everybody bring some money for some hot coffee so they can't kick us out, and then we would do games and preach the message there. So to be here, to have a space to meet was such an awesome thing. I'm going to go to question 6 here. One of the things I cherish the most about the process and having followed Scott and Beth and the timeline of things is getting to see God overcome things we didn't think what we didn't think were possible. Getting a building last minute before September 11th, finding a place like this, affording a place like this, seeing God make a way. Could you talk to us a little bit about some of the obstacles and the doubts you guys faced as a couple, as pastors along the way?
Gosh, yeah, I think there's always obstacles when you're stepping out in faith to do something that you've never done before. And, kind of our challenge to you this morning is to think about that. What is God putting on your heart? And then some of the obstacles that came up for us are just very natural. In our own minds, we didn't see how we might pay the bills. We didn't see if we'd have enough people to keep doing church every Sunday. And those kinds of doubts and fears are very normal, and it just kind of kept us on our knees. I think it actually made us stronger as a couple, because when he was down, I was positive, and I would say, we got to keep going. God put this dream on our heart. He's going to see us through. And then when I was down and not seeing a way through it, you were always encouraging. And so we kind of balanced each other out along the way and along the ups and downs of the journey.
So I'd like to preach my sermon now. I'm really thankful for the nice intro. But, actually...
He worked on that one all week, folks.
I got plenty more. Unfortunately, we're out of time. You're not going to get to hear them all.
He said it in our pre-service meeting as a practice.
So I do want to share something with you, though. All the obstacles and the big thing, I think, aside from location things and you're always, there's so many the highs are really high and the lows are really low when you get started, because one family of 5 showing up means that you increase your attendance by nearly 20%. That's a big deal.
Right.
And cash was always a thing. We never had enough money, and we always wondered how. Well, let me rephrase that. We always wondered how we were going to get there. But last week, Daniel asked me what I was reading and where I was in the Bible, and I mentioned to him what Elijah was up to in 1 Kings chapter 17. You'll remember that Elijah had gone to King Ahab and told him that there was going to be a drought and there's going to be no rain until I say so. And so obviously King Ahab wanted to kill him, and he took off running. And so he was at the brook at Cherith for a while. And that's where the Lord fed him with ravens and that kind of thing. And ultimately, the little brook at Cherith dried up, and it was time for Elijah to move on. And he went to a little town called Zarephath. And when he got there, God had made provision for a widow to care for him. And so as he arrives at this town, the widow is out. You know the story. She was gathering sticks, and he asked her what she's doing. And she says, well, I'm getting ready to make a fire because I've got just enough oil and just enough flour to make one cake. My son and I are going to eat it, and we're going to die because we've got nothing left. And Elijah looked at her and he said, well, why don't you get me a glass of water and bring me a cake and let me eat first? And so here's this poor widow who in faith, take care of me first, and we'll see what happens. And so here's this widow who, wanting to bless Elijah, does that. She takes her last bit of flour and oil and she makes a cake for him. And what is interesting to me as I consider that is that from that point on, the woman's oil never ran out and her flour never ran out. She didn't have a big barn full of it, but there was always that little amount left in the bottom of the jar. There was always that much flour left in the canister. And they survived on bread and oil and water, and they made it for, the word tells us, for many days, and we believe that actually was probably several years. And as I was thinking about that, I thought that's exactly the way that it worked for us here. God brought the right people at exactly the right time. We never had so many talented musicians that we could say, we've got enough people here, we can build 3 or 4 worship teams. We had enough to get by. And same thing with our teaching staff and everything else. We just had enough. And what was really interesting to me was Juan and I were chatting. We get together from time to time to talk about how things are going and how can I help. And he was talking about financials. And I want to share something with you that's super important. And if this doesn't build your faith, friends, I'm going to be worried about you, okay? So I want you to hear this. I want you to remember, how much money did I tell you that we started with? Do you remember? $30,000. Do you know how much Root River Church has in the bank right now? $30,000. I want you to know that we have ministered and we've touched many lives, and in 6.5 years, the oil hasn't run out, the flour hasn't run out, right. And if you don't have faith to see what God has done with the little bit that we had, I don't know how I can help you. Because you need to be able to look at this whole operation that we've run for 6 years, and we have to say it didn't cost us a dime. God has always had just enough for us. And friends, I want you to know that God is going to continue to provide for us as long as you continue to be faithful, as long as you continue to give the very best that you've got. He's going to continue to add to your numbers daily.
That's powerful. He shared, we were at bowling, New Year's Eve bowling, when he told me that. And I needed it. I was asking him questions. I was looking for some awesome wisdom and advice. And this story came to him immediately. He's like, Juan, do you remember this story? And I got goosebumps immediately, because this is why I carry so much love in my heart for them and for what God's done, is because he's proven it. He's shown that he's going to take us to the right place. He's going to send the right people. He's going to give us the right vision, the right equipment, the right whatever we need, we're going to have, and we're always going to have what he gave us with and what we started with from the beginning. And that $30,000, he's not lying when we have $30,000 and some change in the bank, and that's God's doing. And I get excited talking about this stuff, because if that's what God did from nothing to the first 5 years, what will he do from 5 years on? And this is why we get excited about moving forward in the future and casting vision, because the 5 years, God's got to do more. He's going to want to do more. And we just have to be willing vessels. I think as I'm contemplating vision, Scott and I talked about this before. It's not Scott's vision. And it's not my vision. It was what God wanted to do in Franklin, and said, Scott, I'm going to have you and your wife do it. And when you guys are done, I'm going to use the student that followed you, and he's gonna do it. And so I want to encourage you. This is a move of God. It's not a move of the Harms or a move of myself. It's a move of God, and we get to be part of that. We have just a few minutes left, and I want to get some more wisdom out of you if we could. The last question is this, Scott and Beth. What would you say to anybody here this morning that's saying, hey, wow, God did amazing things these last 5 years. How can I be a part of the next 5 years? What would you say? What would your advice be?
Well, I think that I've already answered that, to be perfectly honest with you. I want you to know, friends, that what we're doing here is, it's not about spectators. God brought this group of people to this town at this particular place and time because he has a purpose for all of us. And if you're not giving the very best you have, not only of your time and your talent and your resources, I think you're going to miss the opportunity to receive the greatest blessing of watching God be faithful to you in your lives. And I think that through all of the things and through all the ups and downs and through the illness and everything that we faced, the one thing that I can say is, because we were willing to be faithful and to just give whatever we had, and we did the very best we could, I believe that's why God has blessed us, and we have seen his favor in our lives for the last 5, 6, 22, 23 years. So that would be my challenge to you. If you're not involved, get involved. Give what you have. You may have nothing but a little bit of oil. You may have nothing but a little bit of flour, but give what you have and allow God to take it and multiply it.
That's powerful. Thanks for sharing, Scott. Can we give another round of applause to our founding pastors, Scott and Beth? I would love for us to do another time of worship. So can I invite the worship team forward? Scott and Beth, you can find your seats. Thanks so much. I'm going to pray over you guys. I want to, I get excited about these things. I can't say it enough. And I can't wait for these next 12 months to unfold. God is bringing opportunity. God is casting vision to us. He's letting us in on what he's doing. And I'm excited to walk it through for you. So the band's going to play in a moment. I'm going to pray. You're going to see some black buckets being passed in a few moments. This is just an opportunity for us to worship with our giving. And so if you're new this morning, fill out a Connect card and put it in that black bucket. Don't feel any pressure to give. I won't stop you from giving, but I don't want you to feel that pressure. But then would you just consider along with your giving what God is challenging you to do and how you can serve this coming year, and just see how he'll move and put your faith there, okay? Would you bow your heads with me? Dear Lord, we love you. We're thankful for your love, your mercy, and your grace. We're thankful for the move you had in Franklin, Wisconsin, through the Harms family and the team that you built around them. We're praying, God, that we would remember, like the Israelites ought to have remembered what you did during their time in the wilderness and following Moses, God, that we would always remember where we've come from and what you did for us and through us here in the city, God. I pray that as we look ahead, that we would be excited, that we would see your hand in all things, that we would see your prompting and hear your prompting, that we would be listening to your voice, that we wouldn't be filled with fear, we wouldn't be filled with doubt, but that we would be filled with seeing and remembering and knowing that you've always given us what we've needed. And I pray, Lord, that you would bring opportunity and show us the way forward, and that we would move forward with boldness and no fear, God. We love you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.